Hello, let's get started. We've got a full agenda tonight, so we need to keep to time tonight. I'm Mark Oliver. I'm your host and the organizer of dev.talk. And it's really great to see that the community is growing. We've got loads of new people here tonight, but there's also lots of people who've been here many times before. So the agenda tonight, I'm doing some waffling for a couple of more minutes, and then we're going to use my clicker, and Rachel's going to tell us building product developers love to build. Going to convince all of us developers that we like building products. So looking forward to that one as a developer. And then Sophia's going to tell us about domain-specific languages in action, why, when, and how, which is a really cool title, I thought. So we'll learn a bit about DSLs. Then we'll have a break. And then Ollie is going to tell us about NICs and how to reproduce a developer environment, which is something that I've never heard of before, so quite interested in that one myself. So let's get started. Rachel, over to you. Welcome to the stage.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Rachel. Some of you here might have seen me at dev.talk or Reconnect conference. And today I'm going to talk about building products that devs love to build. I know the word love may sound weird, like, for example, if you're working for a company, do I really have to love what I'm building? It's not love like the way you love your puppy or something, but it's actually putting your mind into what you're doing to make sure that the products you build actually achieve the right goal for the company, if that makes sense. And so a bit of background about me. I have project and product management experience. And this is something that I've been thinking of for a while. Some of you know Sam. And I didn't tell you I was going to point at him, but last year, we live very close to each other, and sometimes we work from home together. And there were times where we're working together, and he's a software engineer, and he was always complaining about his project manager, like, oh, why is she doing this? Why is she giving me these tickets? There's no deadline, blah, blah, blah. And then I, on the other hand, I was always complaining about my devs, like, I told him not to do this. Why is he doing this? So I just saw that there was a lot of friction between PMs and devs, and it shouldn't be so. Like, we are a team, and we are not on opposite sides. So that's kind of what made me want to talk about this, especially given that we have a good mix of devs and hopefully PMs or POs in the room. Just wanted to share a bit of awareness and thinking about, this topic. So it's not going. Okay. Yeah. So the whole idea is how PMs can make devs' work easier, more meaningful, and more enjoyable. And as a PM, that's something that I'm being much more aware and cautious about now as I grow in my career working with devs. I've literally worked with devs all through my career, first as a project manager, but now transitioning more into product management. So it's to basically share awareness on how we can collaborate more effectively rather than making work more stressful for devs. So again, okay. These are some critical dev PM friction points I think a lot of us can relate to in the room. I can see some smiles. I can see, first of all, vague Jira tickets. You get a ticket that says, fix this thing, and you have to go back to your PM. Like, what exactly do I need to do? What are the edge cases? Where do we draw the line? A lot of vague Jira tickets, and this is something that I struggled with my team in one of my previous employment. Another thing I've noticed is PMs telling you, this is a quick change, just 2 days before release, when you've done everything, you've built everything, and you just need to press the button, and then there's a last minute change. I will admit I am also quite guilty of that. Not as a choice though, sometimes it's pressure from senior management, but we've all been there. Another one is roadmaps ignoring tech debts. This is something that I'm also guilty of, and in my most recent role, I actually came to understand why this is also very, very important. I was working with a team and we were on like PHP, was it 8.2 or something like that, whereas we needed to upgrade to like 11 and there was no more support, you know. This was like an actual thing that happened with my team and it was making work more stressful for us. Another one is over-explaining the why, but under-explaining what we actually need to build. And then promising timelines without consulting devs. If you've worked in an agency, I think you can also relate to this, where you need to meet certain client deadlines, or the sales team have promised the client that you can get this in 2 months, or you can get that extra feature in 1 week. And then the PMs have to then work with the devs to deliver this with those constraints. That is another friction point that I found between PMs and devs. And another one is when PM says, it should work like Uber, it should work like this great platform, but simpler. It doesn't always work like that. But what I've learned basically is the moment I changed how I approach product management, it's not telling devs what to do, it's more of a collaboration. So, because these devs are people that actually bring the real work to life. Sam always argues with me and says, without me, you're not going to have a job. I agree. There can't be software engineers. There can't be software engineers without PMs, yes. But at the same time, PMs are here to actually make your work also easier and better. And I'm sure we've all been there when we see a ticket that just says, we just need to do this. You know that it's not going to end well. So as PMs, we need to sometimes ask ourselves, can this quick change actually wait till the next sprint? You know, it doesn't always have to be so rushed. It doesn't always have to be so bang, bang, bang on. Can it wait until the next sprint? Can we actually think about the best way to build this thing before it goes over to the dev? So, let me see again. Okay. I saw this picture online and I thought, this is like a classic example of your day-to-day. When you get a ticket assigned to you, it's like, what now? So why am I talking about this? Obviously, if you've also worked in an agency, there's a lot of context switching. I've worked with really great devs that they find it easy to jump from one project to the other and deliver very well. But I've also worked with some devs that they can only focus on one project at a time. So they find it very difficult to context switch during the day. And as a project manager that has worked in an agency, I've actually had to sometimes juggle up to 5 projects at a time. So we don't want to overload devs as well with several urgent requests. And when PMs and devs don't align, the outcomes suffer because the time you spend giving them vague tickets, they fix something or they do something they think they're meant to do, and then they come back to you and it's all rubbish. You have to spend extra time fixing that thing again. But when you do align, then the product improves overall. So as PMs, our job isn't just to ship features, but also to create that condition for devs to actually do the best work. Okay, I don't know where to point this. Okay, so again, a lot of people jump into product and project management without really good background into actual software development lifecycle. I see myself as someone that relates a lot with developers because I actually studied chemical engineering for my undergrad, but how did I get into tech? I got an opportunity to learn the software development. I started learning Python, Java, SQL, the likes. So I started learning to code. And then that was years ago though, but it actually made me understand the devs world a bit. I can't like build a website now, except with AI, but it made me really see things from a dev's point of view. Like I'm the PM that if I go to a dev and say this thing needs to be done, if they tell me it's 5 days, I can relate and understand why it could take 5 days compared to a senior management that's like, oh, it's just to change a button. So that has really, really helped me. But again, with the rise of, everybody just jumping into PM nowadays, you find some PMs that don't really understand like some basics about software development, and then you end up having a PM like this. Ooh, sorry. Okay, so here are 4 things that I've learned from working with devs that I now want to share with you. And hopefully there are also PMs and POs here that can actually learn from this, because that is the aim of this talk. And also as a dev, to make you also challenge your PMs when you get to work and change the narrative when you're working with them. The first one is clarity over completeness. Devs don't need so many details. They don't need large documentations. They just need to know what they need to fix. They need to know what those clear problems are, what the boundaries are. For example, I want to build this thing. How many users are we actually building for? What are the edge cases we need to consider? Who's our audience? Things like that. Over having loads of pages for them. Again, devs don't really like to read so many things. So we want to be very clear. So I have a question for you. I just built this quickly on Jira. I have these 2 tickets here. As a dev, which one are you more likely to pick and work on if you're assigned this ticket? The one on the left or on the right?
On the right.
Exactly. I used to be this PM, not by choice again, but I used to be this person. And then more recently in my career, I realized that you need to share with the dev what the problem is that we're trying to solve. Like, you don't just write a ticket and say, hey, we need to implement 2FA. Why do we need to implement 2FA? Because that can actually, that would also inform the kind of solution they give you. Does it need to time out? Who are the users? Why are we even implementing it in the first place? Is it for compliance? We need to consider some other things as well. So having a problem statement in tickets, not just tickets, but this way, it's very good for devs to understand what exactly they need to fix. And I've found personally as well, having a clear acceptance criteria has really worked, not just for my dev team, but also my QA team. So I follow the structure, given, when, then. So first of all, I have my requirements doc. I go through it with my devs. We're all clear on the problem. When I create the ticket, I still put in the problem statement, but then in the acceptance criteria, I use the given, when, then. So given I log into this page, when I click on this, then this happens. They know exactly what they need to build. They know exactly how it needs to work, not just how they think it should work. Phone's gone off. Okay. The second one is early involvement saves everyone time. Again, this is another issue that I found with one of my previous roles, where devs were not being involved in the discovery phase of a project. And then the solution to the problem has been decided between non-technical people. And then it comes to the technical person and is like, actually, we can't do that. Or doing that will take an extra month. So that has caused a lot of friction. But now, as a PM, I'm taking more time to actually involve at least the lead dev when it comes to making decisions and that whole discovery phase of like, what do we need? What's the problem we're trying to solve, and how do we solve it? Because I've worked with some really good devs that have actually told me, actually, if we do it this way, it will even save us more time. It it would help us have a cleaner code, or we can scale it this way later. Things like that has really, really helped me more recently. And it has also helped me avoid fewer surprises. Again, if you've worked in the agency, you want to make sure that you give less surprises to the client. So that's another thing. So I don't see devs as just builders, but they are problem solvers for us, and we need to treat them that way. Okay. The third one is respect for the craft. Having about 1 year experience coding, being thrown into the deep end a few years back has made me really see the impact that devs make in organizations. And really good devs care about code quality, technical depth, and scalability. It's not just about bug fixing. Frankly speaking, I've worked with a dev where at some point every day was firefighting and it was bug fixing. And he kept asking me, when am I going to work on an actual feature development that I don't want to keep firefighting. So devs really care about improvements, not just firefighting. And sometimes PMs have the pressure to push things fast. I've worked with clients that ignore tech debts, unfortunately, and with non-technical stakeholders, again, they just want to see the visuals. They just want to see, when they pay you money, they want to see what feature has been built with that money, basically. If you tell them you upgraded PHP for some £1,000, okay, they don't really see what goes on in the back end. So as PMs, we need to ask ourselves, what's the cost of this thing if we don't fix it now? And we need to acknowledge this tech debts, because frankly speaking, I've had lots of backlogs that I've had loads of tech debts that just kept getting ignored, which was not great. And that is why I also think that refactoring might not be sexy on the roadmap, but it's definitely what keeps the light on. And another thing I wanted to add is I worked on a product where we had to do a pen test, and that pen test was actually what showed all the vulnerabilities that we had on the platform, part of which was upgrading the PHP version. So you shouldn't also wait until something is done before you actually look into these tech debts. So it's something that you definitely want to keep on the roadmap. So as devs, if your PM is not looking into these tech debts, especially the urgent ones that need to keep the lights on, that are not going to be supported soon, these are things that you should actually flag to them. And lastly, celebrating the outcomes, not just outputs. I think this is something that I've seen very little PMs also do as well. After shipping the feature, it's like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? Actually, share metrics, share user feedback, share how their work has really helped customers, end users. I'll give an example. I was working on a feature where users would typically create a trial account, and then some customers would just subscribe and have a paid account. And then they could add users either via the model or by importing a CSV. So it got to a point where some customers, part of their employees would create trial accounts. So you had several people creating trial accounts. And then when they needed to be imported, once their company has paid, they keep getting the error that their account exists. So it kept causing friction and lots of support tickets. People saying, oh, I can add this user, blah, blah, blah. And then we have to find them and see that, oh, they had created a trial account. And then we have to deactivate that one and then get them added, all of that. So we came up with a solution, which was a brilliant idea from one of my someone from my dev team, such that I don't know how he did it, but basically when you upload a CSV or you try to add someone via the model, if that account exists as a trial, it deactivates them and then adds them onto the paid account, which I thought was very brilliant. And it's basically stopped all the several Zendesk tickets we were getting like almost every day. And when he fixed that, I actually shared that feedback with him, and he was really happy to see that he's actually made an impact on the product. And reduced a lot of admin work that we would normally have to do for customers. So this is something that I think that PM should also share with devs as well. Okay. So devs want to know that their work matters, and so we should always make sure that they see that connection. So my question to you, what's the one thing that PMs do that drives you nuts? Feel free to share. This is a safe space.
I've got a new one, and
Yes.
if anyone does this, my PM shared an AI-generated data structure and said, "Why don't we use this?" And it was not only blindedly wrong, but it kind of showed that he just clearly didn't care. Yeah, that
That's
was very
a great
annoying.
one. Wow. Okay.
I just said thanks and ignored it. So.
Any other person? Yeah?
Yeah, quite often the managers or staff will ask me to update a website or change something on a website. We've got about 100 websites, they don't tell me which site it is. So I left wondering why.
That's another classic one. Yeah?
I think there's plenty of situations where project managers don't defend their devs, so they take the side of the business, and instead of saying no, they're just too busy, we can't do that, they immediately cave, and it becomes the developer's problems rather than the business.
Yeah, I can 100% relate to that as well. I've not to be proud, but I always try to advocate for devs as well, especially really good devs that I know that, if...
Well, if you don't, who will?
If they don't put their heart to it, they're not going to give you, a really good solution and just cause problems down the line. So as much as, yes, you report to senior management or clients, at the same time, try to be that person that keeps your devs, you are doing well and I am advocating for you type of person.
You don't want to run your devs as headless chickens. It's no, but let them actually solve the problems that they're working
Well,
on.
most devs don't have a voice, right? So when
Yeah.
it comes between you and the client or you and the senior management team, the project manager is that person.
Yeah.
And so, you need to show them.
Yeah,
Good luck.
of course. Any last? Go on. Okay. I thought you wanted to diss me. Okay, so yeah, those are some things that PMs do, and I think we will continue to fight this war. But the whole point of this presentation is to share that awareness and also challenge you as devs to challenge your PMs. Hey, I need my voice to be heard as well. I have this brilliant solution that will actually help you, because guess what? Your wins or the great solution you give them are also wins for them, because at the end of the day, when features are shipped, who gets praise? Not to sound some way, but it's always PMs oh yeah, deliver this new feature. When projects get delivered on time, it's the PMs that get the praise. When it doesn't get delivered, it's also the PMs that get the so yeah, that is, come on. That is me. And that's my challenge to you as PMs. If you're here, just ask, when you think about what we need to build, how can I make it something that devs love to build? And as devs, when you look at that next ticket, don't just see another feature to code, but actually ask, how can I make this something that is worth building for my team? Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Rachel? She's running away. No questions? She doesn't want questions. Okay, well, let's move on then. Okay, sorry, just quick change in technology. We're going to move straight on to Sophia now, who's going to tell us about domain-specific languages. Sophia.
So we are going to dive into the field of domain-specific languages, which is quite technical, but I will try to make it as approachable as possible. And the subject of this talk is I will have succeeded with this talk if at the end of it you understand what a DSL is and if you need it or not, or if it would be useful for you to go in this field if you are a developer, if you are a company, or if you want to do research in this field. So I will try to dive down into the explaining it. So first we're going to see what DSLs are. The subject is very technical. DSLs are advanced programming, is the development of new programming languages. So it's quite ambitious, the whole field. However, once you are in that field, you are one of very few people. There are around 40 people across Europe that work in this field. So you become one of few people. That is good and bad. It's good that you kill the competition around because you are so specialized that there is only few people that take on this work. It's bad if there isn't a specific job opening in this work, which is very rare actually. We are going to talk about real-world applications and kind of case studies. So I'm going to present some of the papers that we have at Bournemouth University about it. And then I will try to give you some guidelines if you are an industry that wants to get in the field, what you need to do. And if you are a student that wants to train on this, what you need to do. If I have explained that, then I think I have succeeded. I say 7 years, but it might be more. This is research that started with Professor Keith Pulp at Bournemouth University, and he is actually the initiator of the field. And with British Telecom, it was a requirement by British Telecom to develop new DSLs for their data science application. So we had funding on it, and it was an industrial need. But so what are domain-specific languages? You all know at least one domain-specific language. SQL. What is SQL? It's a language for writing and reading on databases. It is actually a domain-specific language because it's tailored. It is not Java, it is not C, it's not a general-purpose language. It's tailored to be optimized for accessing databases. And it's not only SQL, there are many examples of domain-specific languages that have been developed over the years. What are they actually doing? They are trying to bridge the gap between the development and the domains. So the previous speaker spoke a lot about the product manager and the developer. DSLs are something that advanced developers are using and are trying to bridge the gap between actually the domain requirements and the development of the software. I have a demo down the line of a real DSL. It's pre-recorded. I wasn't sure. I was trying to avoid the demo effect, but you will see a DSL in action and how you can use it. What are they best at? Because they are a solution. I'm using it for research, but it doesn't mean that we should go into any problem and add a DSL, because they are a costly way of solving the problem, but they are better for some applications than others. They are very good for legal applications and for rule-based systems. So, and that is the reason that this technology is actually very advanced in Germany, in places where model-based engineering is very prominent. And they have been used successfully to model tax rules and generally systems that are require an adherence to regulations. That is one of their strong points. They claim and they help the communication with the domain experts. So they are being handled by a developer that does development, but they have an element of modeling the domain. So they are connecting the development with what are the requirements. And the important thing is that you need to consider them when you want a custom solution. And when that would happen, for example, if I'm a company that I want to do simulation, what are my choices? One of the choices, simulation is one example. Whatever needs I have, I can buy a tool, or I can develop my own. If I'm a software company, a lot of times we are thinking about developing our own tooling, and it does exist a lot. So if you don't want to have the vendor lock-in, so to buy a tool and have to pay loyalty, not have access to the code or anything, and you want to develop a customized solution, it's a DSL that you are going to do, even if you don't know it. So it can be behind many customized solutions. Here I'll give an overview of how all of the papers we had in this area. We started from the data science world, and we developed 3 DSLs on it and published academically the corresponding papers. And that was the requirement by British Telecom. And what was this trying to do? It was trying to simplify AI for the common people, which is what the big giants are doing. I'm not claiming we didn't solve the problem better than the big giants, but it's actually the correct direction where we are using this technology to democratize technology. So the first paper was about classification, and it was actually abstracting several different classification algorithms, trying to bring the doing a classification to any software developer other than a data scientist, and created some interfaces. The full reference is there. And this was the interface that anyone, well, it doesn't appear great, but anyway, that anyone would see, and you would have several algorithms, choose from them, and then see the results in one page. Then we moved on into creating an adaptive virtual learning environment and an adaptive systems DSL, where there was a lot of experimentation of how to create the DSL as a configuration, and then you would have to go into another system to create your virtual learning environment. So all the development wasn't in the DSL environment. The DSL was only the rules and the domain logic. You can see here that the domain is teaching. The advantage that the DSLs have is that in these screens, you don't see any variables, any programming, any implementation. You see only domain aspects, which is what if your client is an education environment, an education application, you see only education. You are going to see an example of a DSL that we have with veterinary professionals and with health, where the screen is actually having only the aspects of the domain, but behind it there is a lot of code, a lot of hard code actually, difficult to learn, but once you learn it, you can build something like that in a week. That is the adaptive systems DSL, and they have a lot. There are many DSLs in academia. Now Google and all of the big players have got in, and we have ChatGPT. Behind it, the way they built it, it was a DSL what they built. They actually democratized the whole deep learning and neural networks to bring it to people. And here I'm going to present something that I'm very passionate about, is how you use DSLs for regulations and for compliance. There is a big problem in the industry where we have GDPR, for example. We have regulations for clinical protocols. That's the theme here. And this, inside the information system, there isn't a universal way to to prove that you are correct. The work was not based on a legal document. It is based on clinical protocols, which is our recommendations. What are clinical protocols? If you haven't heard of the term, the NHS there are some protocols that the NHS and all of the medical organizations should follow. And there are some guidelines at the moment. So what we did is developed a DSL that would actually create a program that would be correct by construction. So it would be correct according to the guidelines. And that program, used inside all of their other systems, will make their systems compliant with the regulation. It's along the lines, I would like to click that one. Am I allowed? I will, we can do it at the end. I'll finish. This was a live ADSL, and I wanted you to actually see the environment. And the specific DSL was for cats, but I don't know why I have a dog in there. The presentation is AI formatted, so I have used something. I didn't create these nice pictures and this nice. It would take me ages, but all of the content is unique. It's not AI generated because this subject is something that the AI at the moment is really struggling. It might get better, but at the moment it doesn't give me good results. So the DSL was about cats and chronic kidney disease in cats. It actually, I can show you a bit of a live demo at the end if I'm not able to present the video, Mark, am I? No.
It should work. I don't know about the audio.
Okay.
You need to select the right audio. I mean, if you're using HDMI or USB, you need to make sure that your laptop uses that for the audio play.
Oh, okay. I think I'll show you the DSL live. I'm brave enough to do that. But that would be at the end. So let's summarize why the important question is, why use DSLs? For sure, don't use them because someone tells you that's a good solution and you should use it, because actually it is a costly solution. It's very hard to learn it, very hard to maintain it, but the outcome, once you have mastered, many companies are using it already and they are not actually publishing about it. There are many DSLs, that's why the field is actually suffering academically. They do the DSLs, they keep them in-house, and there is no publication. They are not even allowed to actually say publicly, give information about the DSL. So you would use a DSL when you actually need it. When you need it, when you don't want to buy an expensive software and depend on the vendor. If you want to do simulation, for example, you can buy a simulation software, but you won't have access to the source code. You will not. Whereas creating a custom solution and having it in-house, you will not have to depend on any of the off-the-shelf solutions they are selling you. And that is a very big thing for someone that's managing software in a company, in my opinion. So if you want a tailored solution and you will use it in many projects, not one-off DSL and then you did it for the sake of doing it. If you have something that you want to enforce rules, there isn't, the better thing that goes after the DSLs is formal methods. So if you want to position it academically, the DSLs are a lighter formal methods approach. Who is using formal methods? Of course, many places, but many places that can afford and need it. For example, NASA is using formal methods. It's very heavy mathematical and in complexity, and it can be impossible for an industry to use. I come from the formal methods research field, and I know very well, and I still like it and love it, but I couldn't find industrial applicability. The DSLs, they are abstract enough to be used by programmers, and they provide formality when you have rules. So if you want a GDPR compliance protocol, if you want a clinical protocol or any protocol, a DSL is very good at it. And well, I think my first and my last point are the same, so I'll move on. If you are a developer, I suspect that half of the audience here are developers and the other half are managers or all developers. Anyway, I'm not going to categorize you in which category. If you are a developer and you want to learn it, what do? Well, first of all, you learn it if your company invests in it. I'm not suggesting you go out to learn it on your own. It is a difficult road. It's not an easy road. It took me 4 to 5 years to get into the proficiency level of doing them in very short period of time. Because you are not learning programming, you are learning meta-programming. You are learning how one level, you understand the programming so deeply that you are creating a new language, you are creating interpreters, you are creating concepts, so you are going one level above the programming. What would really help you is if you are people from model-based engineering, where they know the systems engineering, they can grasp the DSLs better. But it's not an absolute, you have to do that. You have to be very resilient because it is quite a difficult area to be. And you need to have a project for it. If you are an industry and you want to invest in it, of course, what would I say? You would need to actually collaborate and create funded bigger projects, I would say. The academia that works in it is a small world, and what you will get out of it will be customized solutions that you will keep in-house, which is how we actually started this journey in the first place. It's worth mentioning that when I started this journey, there was another road of the domain-driven design, which is something very well spread more well spread in the development world. It is good. The ideas behind the two worlds, they are very similar. The domain-driven design is doing what the DSLs are doing automatically. The domain-driven design is actually giving you a method to do it. And there was some research on how creating the DSLs, the domain-driven, so the two fields are they are near. This one, though, has a lot more rigor behind it in order to understand it, because it's more technical, more programming. These people, they have it the easiest in this. These are the domain users. So we have a collaboration with the University of Southampton, some doctors, medical doctors, and some veterinary professionals are users, are clients, you would say, in quotes. And their life is easier because they come in, you show them the DSL, and then they judge it. They don't have to touch any tools. They don't have to have the difficult journey. The best feedback I ever had for DSLs was from non-programmers. Why? Because programmers hate sometimes, it has a form-based interface, the DSL, which makes the non-programmers more comfortable. So I will actually demonstrate briefly at the end. So the non-programmers have an easy life, and they work with the concepts in their domain. And the way things happen is that you would need to have several meetings with a domain user in order to actually define what are the important concepts and to build the DSL. And that is a Connect type of thing if you are interested in this. So you can see here a DSL that has the clinical protocol for cats. And this is in the development environment of the DSL. Okay. So it's perfect. So in order to actually generate, in the end, you provide to the user a different environment. This is the development environment for a developer, a DSL developer. So you give a name here to your protocol. So I am a vet now. I'm not Sophia, I'm a vet. So I will have to give a name. I will say this is a clinical protocol, and I should use this in order to develop my clinical protocol. So the only thing I'm doing is I do control space, that's the only part of the interface, and then I choose predefined elements from the protocol. This is something that the vets found quite easy, because it was part what they were doing already. And then you go into more complicated things where a medical professional will have to take measurements of something, but it's not any measurements. There are some checks in it. So if I do control space, I didn't know any of these things, but I had to learn them. So I know everything about cats now. And you take the measurement, but then you need to check if your measurement, and you notice here that it gives me only one measurement, the one I have taken, so you cannot check something that you haven't taken. So immediately you can see how the DSL is putting rules inside what you're doing. And here you define the range of things, and it actually automatically has hard-coded things like the unit for creatinine, which is very important in chronic kidney disease, which I learned as well. It gives you the unit. So as you are typing, there is a lot of controls underneath. And the controls underneath are all happening in elements like down here, I think are happening when you are defining things here. So here you define consents, editor, action. So you do a lot of defining. So there is a lot of coding underneath. But the vet is actually seeing this. And they are happy. Once you build something like that, you can change it, and then it's all in one place. So it is actually generating code. The software that the domain user is using has the code in it as well. So theoretically, this is very short. In practice, it doesn't happen like that. Yes?
I think one of the things is that you would normally still have to do a lot of back-end implementation.
Yes.
In all the languages.
I didn't.
So like you do the
Yes,
final
and a
testing
lot
stuff,
of training to get to the point. Once you have the training, a DSL is finishing in a week. Not when you don't have the training, you need to go the uphill first. It's not easy. I can't just say, let's get in of it. It's going to be easy because you're going to hate me afterwards. After you sat down a bit, you're going to say, what was she talking about? And what is this concept and the action and the constraint and all of this. But the outcome that you get, if you're an industry and you have it in-house, and many they do, they just don't publish it because they don't want anyone else to actually do it.
Do you know why that is?
Eh?
What is the reason behind industry not actually publishing the DSLs they're using?
Because it is actually, well, it's just competition. It's a tool they build to use in-house. So if they actually publish it, they publish some things. There are papers where they say, but they mask the screen, they mask this, they mask that. So there are papers where you see big industries like Canon printing in Germany, but they have most of the screens. And the industries that had invested in it was manufacturing and automotive, which had a lot of funds going on.
It very well, almost directly expresses the way that they do business, which is their competitive advantage.
Yes, they don't actually, it's not, and that's why the research we have been doing here is how to properly evaluate this, because from the research perspective, if they are evaluated in the business, you say you evaluate it if it works. Did I get any benefit? Which is, I agree with, but academically, there is a need to say that the time is up. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Just before we all break up, I just want to draw your attention to our supporters. Bournemouth University, that's why we're in this room. They kindly provide the room for us. Reconnect conference, the local tech conference that happens yearly. You may or may not find the founder in the room. And Just Pick One UK, who's providing all the cameras and doing all the editing for the YouTube videos and things like that, which is my lovely wife, Kerry. We've got about 20 minutes. Let's have a break. There's drinks and biscuits. Otherwise, say hello to each other. Okay, right. We're going to move on. We're going to move on to Ollie, who's going to tell us lots of things about Nix, whatever that is. Let's welcome Ollie to the stage.
Welcome. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, Ollie, poor flea. I used to be a teacher and I used to tell the kids it's poor like no money and flea like fleas. And that always kind of works. And yeah, I was a teacher for 8 years, so feel free to stick your hand up. If you throw things at me, it'll make it a little bit more like I'm at home. Sorry? Do you mean Unix? No, I mean Nix. Yeah, good question. It's a stupid name because it really doesn't help like minimize what you're looking at. No, yeah, I mean Nix for reproducible developer environments. I'm kind of work my way through a story to hopefully get us to what we need. So, if my thing will work, I think. Yes, we're good. Okay, so this is basically nothing to do with the talk. So, but it just helps to put your I presented to one of my friends and he was like, I don't know what protos are, so none of this made sense. So for those of you that don't know, protos are a way of writing. David knows. They're a way of writing contracts. You write a contract in this proto language. Am I pointing to that? Oh, it kind of doesn't work on the screen. Yeah, that's weird, isn't it? I'll point. Protos, you write your protos. They're a contract that you can use to then feed through some code generation. That gives you like a set of compiled types that you can use for both clients and servers. So you can kind of think of it a little bit like JSON, but you're agreeing in upfront what the relationship is going to be. So the client will send a message that the server knows what it's going to look like, is a rough description of what we're doing. So the bit that we're kind of really talking about is this bit, which is the compiling bit. Like, how do we compile these protos and get exactly the same proto output every time? And so this happened at my work. This is me reviewing a PR, and it's 2,000 line changes and about 500 deletions, which, I don't know, maybe for some people that's okay. For me, I was a little bit like, what the hell's going on here? But when I opened it up and dug into it, this is what was happening. So the developer who raised the PR had a different version of protoc, the compiling bit, and he was basically just deleting the version number everywhere. So he probably made about 4 changes, but you had to dig through it to find out what was going on. And then the best bit was the next guy that came along who had a different version of protoc would do exactly the same thing, but in reverse. And so you'd end up with all of this. So yeah, a real mess and a real pain. So every developer had a different version of the tooling that they needed to actually do the generation, which obviously is not great. So we put our developer brains on and tried to come up with a solution. And an old classic, sorry it's a bit small, but let's just make a makefile. So, sorry, this is very small, but there's a makefile. We'll just shove this into our folder, and then everybody can use the same makefile. That we'll just say, oh, we want ProTalk version 3.14. We'll just curl it, and then we'll just sudo unzip it, and we'll delete some stuff and clear up. Anyone see any potential problems with that? Anything they don't like?
Why not running user level? But
yeah, I don't like the sudo much.
Downloading it out of GitHub is not necessarily the best approach either.
No. Anybody else? Will this?
Will it actually run on the developer's Linux distribution?
Yeah, I mean, and you're hoping they're using Linux, right? If they're using Windows, they probably don't have a /user local. I mean, maybe we just bin off every Windows user. I think that's probably fine.
Well, we must use WSL now.
Yeah, WSL, yeah. The big thing as well is it's not really clear what happens if they've already installed ProTalk, right? Like, they probably already have it here at /user, like bin ProTalk. Yes. So, like, you can't really just dump it in and hope for the best. So, yeah, not great. And the best bit was that was actually already in the repo. So people just ignored it. It didn't really work. A real mess. Yeah, I don't really want to curl and download things off the internet unless, I've really kind of checked out what it is. And yeah, like I said, you can just ignore it. And it doesn't link to CI, so there's no way of like actually doing the same steps that you're doing locally in a CI. So the whole thing just not great. So we continued to have a think. Make wasn't working. If only we had some way of like building a little machine that we could install the binaries on, and then we just ship that machine around, right? Distribute that. That sounds like a good idea. And hopefully we're all thinking, Docker? Good, yeah, let's do Docker. So, sorry, this is even worse to read. It doesn't matter. You don't need to, hopefully you'll know roughly what a Docker file looks like. It's basically the same thing, right? We install ProTalk in our Docker image, which this is going to be much better. It's not going to go wrong. We have to do some other rubbish. I cut down what you need. You need a lot more tools. So we have to add all of these different tools. We'll chuck our makefile in there. We need some like Go dependencies. We need some JavaScript dependencies. So we'll just chuck everything in. We'll run make install. Everything will work. And it kind of does. Does anyone have something like this at their work? Yeah, a few people. David?
Not for building.
Not for building?
Not typically for building.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, a few people, yeah, something similar. And it's not that bad. There's some good things. We can distribute this system and we can get roughly the same thing every time. We can use it in CI. I meant to, it's not really CD, but we can use it in CI. Great, you can tell I don't like it because my pro list is only 2 things. Sorry. We've only really lifted the problem up into Docker, right? Like,
Still doesn't tell you whether people are using the latest Docker image.
Well, that, but this. I mean, we're getting a bit niche here, but there's a problem here with this ProTalk tag, right? Anyone know what happens
Yeah.
if I go to GitHub and I download a tag? Is that the same tag forever? No, you can just overwrite it, right? Like if you wanted to. And like arguably this is never going to happen, right? And I mean, the whole point of this talk, the whole point of this talk is whether you believe this will ever care, you'll ever care about this. But like it's not necessarily going to be exactly the same thing every time. It should be roughly, but probably not. Well, probably will be, but might not be. And to be honest, the biggest problem is you're having to add every single language that we use. So at my work, we use like 3 or 4 languages. Every time you add a new language, your Docker file gets bigger and bigger, and you have to kind of
understand how their build system works if you're installing some tool from that language. And each of those package management systems might have its own problem with determinism, right? Because we're using some Go dependencies, that's pretty good at like downloading and installing the same tools each time. Knowing JavaScript, it's probably not, it's probably just a mess. So yeah, we end up with a bit of a problem. It's really slow. Like as a developer, I don't want to run a Docker image to then run some more things. I just want to run the thing. Like I don't want Docker in the middle. And maybe it does. I mean, I've never really tried this, to be honest, but it's not one of those things that, like, it's not running on my machine. It's running in Docker on my machine. But if I want it to link up with my IDE and those kinds of things, the tooling's not really going to be there. So the point of this talk is Nix, which is to try and get everything on my machine the same as everybody else's-ish, like pretty close. I'm going to attempt a live demo, so let's see how wrong I can go. Cool. So I've never written Odin before today, or before I started this talk, but here's some Odin. And I also have never installed any Odin tooling before. So if I open up a terminal and I run Odin, it just doesn't work because I haven't installed Odin before. So let's do some Nix. Let's see if we can get this to work. So I do this through what's called a flake, and there are some other options for Nix. I'm hoping this talk inspires you to have a go, but flake is what most people do. You first need to describe the things you're putting in, which is this inputs at the top. So what I'm saying is I want you to go and download Nix packages, which is, I think it's the biggest open source project, like full stop. And I think it has the largest amount of packages like shared on the internet. So most things that you want are in there. Some things won't be, but there are ways around that as well. But we're going to start with that as our inputs. And then our outputs are the things that we're going to output, the things we're going to produce. It takes in, so this is the syntax is weird. If anyone likes functional programming languages, it's a functional programming language. But outputs is a function, and this is the inputs to our function. So you input yourself to because it's self-referential, and you input Nix packages, which is where we're going to get all of our packages from. And then there's like a nice little let binding here, which is quite nice. I'm only going to build this for Linux. We could include Mac users if we wanted to, but I don't like them. So we then say, out of all of Nix packages, we're going to limit it to just the Linux ones. So I only want the Linux packages because you can build packages for multiple systems. I only want the Linux ones. So all of that was just set up for the thing I'm going to output, and this is the key bit, is this developer shell, or dev shell, for my Linux system. Default just means it's the one that it builds by default, and we're going to make a shell. And in there, I can list all the packages I want. So I've put Odin in there, which is great. And then if I run Nix develop, it has cached the downloading, which is why it looks so quick. It does normally take a bit longer than that. I can then run Odin run, which I had to look up as well. Oops, thank you, sorry. It is next to the one I wanted. There you go, it works. And like the cool thing about this, right, is I didn't have to think about how to install Odin. I didn't have to look anything up. And if I look at what's in my directory, ignore the Protos thing, we'll come back to that. The hello world.odin was the thing I showed at the beginning. The flake bit was what we spoke about. So what's this flake.lock? Well, the flake.lock, if we have a look at that, is like it's similar to like package.json or like your go.sum. But what it's saying is like it would have more inputs if you have more inputs. But for my input, it's just got Nix packages. And the key bit here is this revision. And so that is actually a commit on GitHub which is the one that it has downloaded to get my packages from. So if you installed this, if I shared this repo with you and you ran Nix develop, that Odin is exactly the same Odin that I have, in theory. And, sorry, I'm kind of like trying to use two screens. So how does this, bouncing all the way back to my protos, how does this look if you were at my work? Well, it looks something like this. And it's pretty much the same, right? I added a nice description, and I added a load of comments to not scare my coworkers too much. But we have some Nix packages. This Flake utils is just a bit of a helper thing to basically just shove out a load more systems, so I can build it for Mac and whoever else wants to use it. I think in theory you could install it on like a Raspberry Pi or whatever you wanted to, assuming the packages are there. This bit here looks pretty crazy, but at work, we have a package that we've created ourselves for doing protos. So this will go and get that package. It will get the version that you tell it to. And because of this SHA, the hashes, it will make sure that that is exactly the same one. So if even if someone updates the tag, you'll end up with exactly the same one. Or it will, well, I think it would fail if someone had if you'd updated the version but not the hash, it would be like, no, you shouldn't run this because it's a different installation. Oh yeah, cool. And then the last bit, we've got our make packages again, and we just got a load of stuff that we install. I mean, arguably we don't really need Git, but there you go, it's there. And this will go and get all of those things, and everybody that uses it will end up with exactly the same version as everybody else, which has massively helped in terms of reducing those arguments about dependencies and that kind of thing. So there you go, demo worked, that's good. So hopefully some of you are thinking, is Nix for me? The answer is almost definitely no. I love it, I think it's brilliant. I have managed to convert some people. That list is small, but maybe growing a little bit every day. It is complicated to learn. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. I showed you a new programming language, and I think, especially if you took this to your coworkers, a lot of people are going to say, I'm not learning another programming language. But actually, it's really simple. It's not wildly different from JSON. That has a bad connotation in terms of JSON has some problems with it. But there's functions. It is a functional language, but pretty much everything that you build is they call it an attribute set, which is just a fancy way of saying a map. So you have some keys and you have some values. That's it. The outputs are keys and values. So you end up with a big map of your keys and values, and some of those values are how you build packages and where they're from. But actually, yeah, it's not as complicated as it appears. The payoff is complicated to explain. There are lots of people in this room who will go away and be very happy with Docker, and that's fine. If that's you, I don't care. I think you're wrong, but it's fine. And the error messages are pretty hard to understand. It's one of those where it really needs a lot more people working on better error messaging and documentation and all those kinds of things. But I think it might be the future. I think the way that you can set up, because I use it for my operating system, which if people are interested in, I can show you, where my whole operating system is installed declaratively. So I don't have to go and download, if I wanted to swap to a new laptop, it takes me about 10 minutes because I just install the file that says how I want my operating system to work, and it goes and does it for me. It normally goes wrong a bit, but that's fine. You can figure that out. And after a while, I've got to quite a good place now where I've got 3 computers running off this one configuration file, which I've committed to GitHub, and you can share and people can learn from. When it's working, it's super powerful, in terms of pinning those dependencies. This gives you a glimpse of why people don't like me very much. My security team are talking about tracing our dependencies and trying to figure out when we do a HTTP call or any call in our pipelines, what is that doing? Because they want to figure out which dependencies are we installing, can we trust them all? like that is just done for you in Nix. Like the whole system is built around that kind of idea of tracing dependencies and building reproducible images. And yeah, the big thing, you're probably doing this like the same features yourself. Like if you are like, trying to pin dependencies for your developers or share tooling across your teams, you're probably doing what Nix does. But I mean, probably in a slightly more readable way than Nix, arguably. But I think this is where it might end up going. I mean, at least I hope so. I found a quote which I thought was really good. This guy, Ian Henry, I just seem to bump into him all the time. I think he just does some cool stuff. I think he works for Jane Street now, maybe. But yeah, I mean, you get the gist of it. It's kind of how I feel. It's like it does kind of suck, but like so does everything else. And like maybe this is the least of all the bad things. So yeah, there you go. I mean, I feel like I'm now unconvincing you. Anyone that thought it was cool is now like, it's really not. If you want to have a play, you can just go to nixos.org and download it. You can use it on Linux, Mac, Windows through WSL. And I think, Raspberry Pis and other things like that as well. And you can use it, like you don't have to uninstall your whole operating system and use Nix. You can just use it as well as. So I've made my teams at work install it, even though they don't want to use it for everything. My only slight proviso is Mac has issues, because of course it does. But the way it works, like I don't want to get too far into like how it works, but like the way it works is it like saves all of these packages in a like /nix directory, which Mac apparently just doesn't let you write your own directories, which I don't know, it seems like a weird thing. You're just not allowed to do that. So yeah, there you go. Oh yeah, I'm trying to steal people. If anyone wants to come to my Haskell book club, it's on a Sunday. If you want to get a fair review, Kevin over there has been coming along, so he'll tell you what it's like, not from me. I did buy him a beer last time, so I might buy you all a beer if you turn up. I won't pretend to be an expert on Nix or Haskell, but we're reading a book together. It's been quite good fun. So if anyone wants to come along, come and have a chat. There's a meeting this Sunday. And questions? Hello.
So does it actually, once you've installed the stuff, does it install it on your machine, or does it install it in like a virtual environment or container?
Wow.
A good question. So it installs it on your machine, and essentially like a simplified version of how it works is it basically installs it and it updates some symlinks. So it says, this is where you can find this version of it. So it's not running the container. It's like running actually on your machine.
How does that then solve your original problem? Like if you have that package already installed?
Because it installs it somewhere completely differently. Yeah, it installs everything under /nix in a store. I think I might be able to. We're dangerously out of demos now. Yeah, this should work. Oh no, I don't have that one. Let's try something I do have. Oh yeah, cool. So I don't actually have Go installed here. This is like a symlink where it thinks it's here, but it actually links to a directory that has the hash in it. So my Go is like kind of definitely this version because it has a hash for that one. And in fact, you can install multiple versions of the same thing. So if you wanted to run like, I don't know, 10 different versions of Python, you could do that. They'd all be saved in their own directory. And then it just updates the links back to them to point to the right one.
But in Windows, you still have to deal with WSL.
Yes, yeah. But then just get off Windows and get a Linux. It's free. Cool. Any more questions?
How does it compare to Docker in terms of like isolation? Because I guess one of the other benefits for me with Docker is that I feel like it's a sandbox environment of sorts.
Yeah, yeah.
So if this is running on your machine, I don't know what the trade-offs there.
So, like, I think Docker, like, who's the guy? Kelsey Hightower, one of the like big Docker guys or Kubernetes guys, was talking about how like if they'd known about Nix a while ago, they just wouldn't have bothered with like Kubernetes and Docker because it does all of that, but it like it does it like opt-in. So I think again, sorry, but
Fire jail or CH root even, if you want to.
I think this is the command. I can't remember. There's something I can do where like I can go into that shell but only install the packages that you've told it to. So in our CI, it doesn't matter, right? We start from an empty Nix container and then you install everything you want. If you wanted, like people do run Nix like on hardware, like, you know, like on bare metal, and then you would just describe the machine you want in Nix and it would only install those things. And again, like, I suppose if you wanted to like you could still use Kubernetes and use Nix to build the Docker images as well, because it's really good for that, because it will build you exactly the same Docker image by using Nix to do it, if that makes sense. Yeah.
The other thing, this Nix runs as your user account, isn't it?
Yes, although I think
I mean, there's probably some stuff that you can't, but yeah.
Like, there's some, if anyone tries it, there's like a bit of a difference between like multi-user and single-user install. So you can do a single-user one that only works.
You can always use a temporary user.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I've been playing around. Like I don't know huge amounts about it, but I've been playing around with like deploying with Nix, and yeah, it like completely sandboxed in a much better way than Docker is. But I mean, there's no one here to defend Docker, so yeah.
How does it compare with dev containers?
Yeah, I think a lot of the dev container tools use Nix behind the scenes. So I don't know. It depends on the like provider, but a lot of them use Nix, I think. Yeah. Cool. Anything else? Great. Hopefully someone tries it. Let me know. Yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. So, thank you to all our speakers, the volunteers and supporters for dev.talk. You know, we have to remember that the speakers and the volunteers are doing it on their own time. Nobody's getting paid to be here. Nobody's getting any money. Sorry, speakers. I haven't got any, so I can't give you any. They're all taking a lot of time out to produce these things for us to come here and talk to us. So a big thank you to our speakers again. Give them a round of applause. So the next dev.talk is in November 26th, hopefully here in Bournemouth Uni somewhere. I'm not quite sure where. It will be our anniversary, our birthday, dev.talk birthday. So we'll be running a year. So there'll be some cake perhaps. I don't think I'll bake it. So November 26th. So get your tickets now. And that's it. So thank you for coming to dev.talk. It's been really good, and again, the speakers are to be thanked very much. So, and that's it. So thank you all for coming.